Welcome everybody to the October 17th, 2022 meeting of the Berlin Select Board. It is 7 o'clock. Let's start with the announcements that the meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access Channel and YouTube. Your voice, your image, and your telephone number may be recorded. It's funny how I always want to read that, even though I've said it, and heard it hundreds of times.
Yeah.
We are still sort of waiting for our town administrator to join us, but let's start with the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 3rd open session meeting minutes.
I'll second.
I think that is fine. Then we shall vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
I might skip over correspondence. There was a correspondence folder, wasn't there? Sorry, I keep a lot of things open, but I didn't keep that folder open. The Sierra Club has invited us in the town to a plastics pollution crisis meeting. I think it's a statewide meeting. And it's going to be Thursday, the 27th. I am sure we could put more information about it. If it's from 7:30 to 9:30 and it is on a Zoom meeting, we could probably put this on the town Facebook page if people are interested in that.
It is up there already. And
It is
Facebook.
on there.
Gary already did. Yep.
I don't know if there's the other. I don't know if any of the other correspondence is something we needs to say or discuss at the meeting. It's fairly mundane stuff. Let's go on to public comments. Is there if anyone in the public has something you'd like to say while we bring forward the Chief Clark for his department update? I actually didn't even look. Is Chief Clark in the audience?
He is actually not. He was not told to be here. So
that is actually what I talked to the other day. He wasn't told either. So
right.
let's skip that part today. And so let's go on to the.
well, if anybody in the audience wants to be heard, they could raise their hand.
Yep. And that while we're doing that, if you want to bring forward the people for the continuation of the tax classification hearing. And I have the motions, I have the PowerPoint, but I don't actually have what I have to say first.
Oops.
Oh, I think Mary Reddington's for the next presentation.
Yeah, Mary can go back.
It jumps around, Scott. You've seen this.
I know. Yeah, I do. It does. It is annoying that way.
Hold on, Mary Reddington. I'm going to put you back in the audience for a minute.
You don't actually see Molly in the audience either.
Mm-mm.
She usually is. She's the Zoom channel.
And if that is so, I cannot promote her because I'm logged in the same way that she's logged in, so that she needs to log in as an individual.
So can she log out and go to the Town of
Yeah.
Berlin page and mygovernment.com page, whatever
She just-
that one is, and
Okay,
go
she
in from
just
there?
jumped off. She just jumped off. She's doing that,
Yeah.
and Kristen is coming on.
See, we're still all learning this technology stuff.
Is TA1.
Hey,
Hi,
Chris.
everybody. My apologies. I don't know what was happening there. It wouldn't let me log in.
Yep.
I used to have an employee like that, Kristen. Oh, I'm having PC issues. Oh, I'm having PC issues. Yeah. Mhm.
No, this one was
I'll
real.
say-
It kept saying, if you're the host, sign in to join the webinar. So I used a fake email address and I overrode it somehow. So
That's the application will cache your sort of login stuff.
I think so from like previous meetings I held, so my apologies again.
My guess is that Molly's having that problem as well, since
Yep,
she has.
Molly's logging in again as Town of Berlin somehow.
Hmm,
All right,
The
she's
wonders of tech.
trying it again.
Yep.
Bev and Kevin, you don't know this presentation by heart yet?
Not exactly. Every year it's a little bit different. Yes.
Kevin's smart. He doesn't want to get shot with all the questions, just saying. Mhm.
Well, I think I'm allowing Molly to come up only in her capacity to talk, but not to be a panelist.
Can you hear me? I
We
can,
Yep, we can hear you.
it won't let me change my, it doesn't give me
Yep.
the option of change. I went in through my town government and logged in, but it's not giving me the option to change anything. So that means you won't be able to see my screen.
No, but I have the PowerPoint up on my screen here somewhere. I'll present as we get
Well,
close. to it.
I had other stuff I was gonna show you. Let me
Oh.
see if I can log off and log back on one more time.
Try a different email. That helps.
Yeah,
I think what happened is I must have logged into this channel previously for a different meeting and it was thinking I was the host for a not this meeting. I'm not really sure. We'll have to ask Travis, Mary, and figure out what's going on there.
Scott, remind me when we get back to the liaison updates, I can give you a little bit more information on the presentation about plastics. I got a sneak peek of it last week.
okay.
It was very sad, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I moved places and it occurs to me that I do actually not have a pen in front of me. I'll have to take notes on the phone. Look in the audience. Don't see her at the moment. Shoot, presentation, agenda.
Can we skip to anything quick and
That's
speedy
not,
until
that's,
she comes back?
I was pulling up, but it is. I'm not sure something that is going to be relatively quick to.
I can do
well-
the first new business if Molly's not here.
Yeah, why don't you take the first new business? Go for it.
Right.
Give her a
So
moment.
a couple weeks ago, I was at a private event down in Bellingham, gorgeous senior center. Can I say, dear God, I wish that we had that money to do that, and happened to strike up a conversation with a woman there who was the recipient of a lot of stuff from Party City when it went out of business in Bellingham. And she said that she had about 40 costumes, children's costumes, that she didn't know what to do with. And so I said, give them to me. So, wasn't acting on behalf of the board, wasn't, didn't need board approval. It was just resident Peg. Got in contact with the food pantry, distributed some costumes there, went down to the soccer practice last week, distributed some more costumes there. I was the costume fairy, went over to Berlin Memorial School, dropped off what I had left. They were toddler, they were tiny. So it was just, an example of take care of others because you should and pay it forward when you can. So she had the costumes donated to her. She donated them to me. I passed them out to families in town. So what I just like to do is send a letter back to the senior center in Bellingham, just thanking her for giving us those. We made about 30 families very happy that they weren't going to be spending $25 plus on a costume for their kid that they probably fit in for the next 30 days and then outgrow. So there's a letter that Mary had put together just as a thank you for doing that. So honestly, it was right place, right time. right party, right conversation that I stumbled across these costumes of all ages. So it was just a nice thing to do.
I think it's worthy of doing. Should we?
Would you like a motion?
Yeah. Do you want to make the motion, Peg?
So I make a motion to send a letter of thanks to the Bellingham Senior Center for their generous donation of Halloween costumes.
Second,
I think it's a great idea. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, oh hell yeah.
Can we send some pictures?
You know what? I tried to get pictures, but I got so caught up in all the kids coming like at me, wanting to try all the costumes on. And then the parents, this one little kid came up to me, little girl, and she said, "How much are these costumes?" And I said, "Oh, they're $8 million." And she said, "All right, my grandfather's over there." And I'm thinking, well, hello, I want to meet him. So it was, the parents were astonished that these costumes were just being given away for free. So I had my phone ready to take pictures because I wanted to, send them to Mary to put them on the letter, but got too caught up in the moment. So
Okay.
if I see them on Halloween night in the center of town, I'll snap some photos.
Yeah.
So thank you for your approval on that. Again, just saying thanks to another town for help. Unintended.
Mhm. That's good. Sorry, I thought I saw Molly for a moment.
She was there and I think she might be trying it again because she keeps signing on as the town of Berlin.
Yeah. So I thought when I put in an email address, I liked Kristen's idea of putting in a different email address.
That's
just-
what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it wasn't a fake one, actually. It was my personal one, but that one
Yeah.
worked.
Can we do the cancellation of
Yeah.
next week to the week
And
after?
So next week, both Kristen and I are out of town. There's actually nothing on the agenda for that meeting at the moment, although I'm sure there would be things to work on. And the big worry was whether or not this presentation for the tax hearing could continue. And then similarly, not meeting on Halloween night seemed like a good idea, and just pushing that one out one day so that we can enjoy our neighbors and the trick or treating that goes on and not have to suddenly like disappear at 6:50 and run upstairs or run somewhere to a meeting. Chris, I will still be out of country for the 1st of November. And so if you could do agenda setting that previous Thursday,
Sure.
or whatever time works for you and Kristen, so it gets posted on time, that would be great.
Okay.
And we did, yep, go ahead.
No, so we're meeting the 31st, or because the agenda says and reschedule October 31st.
Right, reschedule October 31st to November 1st.
Oh, it doesn't say that. Okay, that's
It
fine.
doesn't say that on the agenda, but it did in the minutes because we sort of
Yeah.
voted on it last time, but I was gonna sort of say it again now that we're closer to them. So we will meet on our next meeting will be November 1st.
Alrighty.
Well,
And then, yep. Go for it, Molly.
Well, I was seeing if I could. So that's me talking. I don't know why it won't let me change.
Do you have a home email address you could use?
Oh.
Oh.
I've done that. I don't
Okay.
understand. I think it's because I'm using this computer,
Oh,
but
Molly,
anyhow,
can you-
so
You're in the presentation room. Do you have a share screen button so you can share screens when you get there?
I don't have any access to anything but voice because of my situation of my name, won't let me, Mary can't let me be a participant, I guess.
Can you mail them? Can you email
I-
the documents and one of
I
us can
did
share?
I did email them.
Yeah.
But maybe I emailed them Board of Selectmen because I thought select board, but maybe is June out there? Maybe she can share. I emailed it to her too. Oh,
I've got them. If you want to see them, I've got them.
well, I
Right.
just wanted you to be able to see the spreadsheet, the what if spreadsheet with all the 50 lines.
Yep. I can I can pull it
Molly,
up.
you emailed that to me, right?
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, select board update for classification hearing, you're attaching the what if spreadsheets for the. So why don't I call that meeting to order while we figure that part out? Whoops, where's the,
That's me. I'm sharing the document that
No,
Molly
no,
said, so if
thanks.
Molly wants to talk, I'll drive.
So, public hearing notice, per Massachusetts, General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, the Berlin Select Board opened a public hearing, on Monday, October 3rd at 7:15, which was continued until this evening, Monday, October 17th, 2022. As it occurred on October 3rd, the Select Board will meet jointly with the Board of Assessors to discuss and determine this, certified valuation of each class of property, the minimum residential factor, and allow for the tax burdens among the four classes of real property, which are residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. This continued hearing is being held virtually only and at the Zoom platform that we are in. Interested citizens may present oral feedback at this hearing. Citizens have also had the opportunity to send written comments to the board prior to the hearing or at our email address, which is selectmen@townofberlin.com, or by US mail. And so the hearing is open. So I gotta go so I can see
all right,
the
so,
spreadsheet. And
If
there's
you
a
can-
power. Yep.
yeah, you wanted to see all the,
Yeah, yeah. I was mostly in the 1% between like 40 and 50.
well, you got them.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
just wanted to let you know that every time we make a change in a number in the recap sheet, it changes this whole thing and I have to go re-enter it. So when I presented this the first time, the single tax rate was 1576. You can see the more we tweak it, the more June and I enter things, it changes slightly. So now it's, the single rate would be 1588. I just wanted you to see that it's gonna balance
Mhm.
whatever, you need to pick the split. And then
Right.
the tax rate will balance out, is what I guess I'm trying to say. Not very well.
Right, that we're not actually selecting a tax rate as much as we're setting the split between, or the between commercial and residential, and that de facto sort of sets a rate.
Yes, correct.
And
the-
that, as you point out in the presentation earlier, we are not changing the amount of money that is being taken, because the total amount of money is set by town meeting back in May when the budget was originally set.
Correct. It's just that the malls are not doing well, so their values have been dropping.
Right.
And I think I told you this last year that at some point it's gonna go past even and tip back into residential, and that's what it's doing now. Because the sales, I sent you you wanted to know about the
Yep.
sales, so do you have that one too?
Yep,
Peg.
I get it.
Thank you, Peg. What would I do?
You're
without you?
welcome, Molly.
There you go.
Is this the doc?
Yes. So there are the tax rates for FY '22, because no one's has their tax rate set for FY '23 for the towns that are surrounding us. So we still have like the lowest, just about the lowest. And I mean, Clinton's a lot bigger, so they have, as you can see, Bolton's a lot smaller. So it's, sort of relative. So
So Molly, last week there was a mention of the tax bill potentially going up about $1,500, which just might have been a guess at that time. So I'm just curious where that came from and how it got to that number, because that is a ginormous increase, with all the inflation and stuff going on around us. Yeah, that's harsh.
if you go back to the PowerPoint and go to the sample tax bill,
No, I don't have it. I've got,
oh,
yeah, hang on. Whoops, lost
The
it. Hold tight.
PowerPoint's in the folder.
All right, going, hang on. Dun, 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 dun. It's like
Is that
under
the one
pressure.
from last week or the new one I sent?
It's the, I was in the, it must be the new one because of the first page says continued October 17th.
Okay,
Oh, I got it.
I kept updating it, but that's okay.
Hang on.
Right.
Pressure to find the right PowerPoint presentation. There you go.
Yeah,
Okay. Ready?
So if you go down to it's yellow, it's got yellow in colors highlighted.
Yellow and up,
That
yellow.
one.
Okay.
Can you make it any bigger, Peg?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna, let me stop sharing. If I download it, I should be able to, pull it back up and make it big. Go ahead, Molly, keep talking. I'll catch up with you.
Oh. Okay, so the latest one that I did just before we started this meeting, the 50% shift would have a residential rate of 1403 and the taxes would be going up 697.31 on the average home.
Scrolling to yellow. Sorry for giving everybody any,
There,
okay.
Vertigo?
Yeah, that's the word that I was looking for. All right.
so
Good.
because the values went up
right.
in residential and went down in commercial, there's more than just what you normally see going on when we do this presentation.
Right.
So if you, any other questions? So the values are going up about 20% on the average value.
For
Anybody-
residential, Molly?
For residential, yes.
Right.
So, Molly, can I jump in here?
But the rates we're
Surely.
talking about are going down.
To me, let's just run through that scenario we talked about earlier. Okay? All right. So last year's price, average price of a house was about 460,000, correct?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like down a couple lines in this, on this slide.
Okay. Now, with the about 20% increase, it has jumped to,
558 or 559 if you round up.
okay. So about a 21% increase.
Yep.
So that average bill would then increase how much?
Well, if you go the whole 50%,
No, no, we were talking about the 145
okay,
split.
45, the taxes would go up 786.32.
Right, it's not the 1,500 peg, so that fixes your question there.
Okay.
Okay,
Right, so although the value of the house went up 20%, we are talking about a significant decrease in the rate. But even the net of that is an increase in taxes for most folks, because your splits here, because we're at, what, 57,000 in fiscal year 22.
We
and
were at
even,
1563. Did I talk over you? 1563.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where that is, because I was looking at the fiscal year 22, the 49% shift. It has 1557 on the slide. But anyway, 1563, we're still talking about something that's in the range of probably between 1445 and 1403 as the tax rate, if we do the various shifts that you have listed there.
Correct.
right, it would be $14.20, Scott, exactly, yeah.
Right. If you do the
Okay.
40, if you do a 45% shift, the effective tax rate would be $14.20 a thousand. And that the average tax bill would then go up, as you point out on that same line, $786 or 9.91%.
Yes, that, right at this moment. I don't believe we have all our figures, but that, to me, kind of explains it, yes.
And then, so you have a condo column that's not in the condo column. So you said the average price of a condo went down.
Yes.
And so condo
Well-
owners, you could see a
well-
small decrease.
The value went up a lot because of the Highland Ridge, 55 and older. But all those sales have not hit this year. They will be next year's sales. So the sales that sold this year, there wasn't that many, and they sold out of the, the older condo units, and they just stayed like basically the same. It wasn't as noticeable as real estate, as single family
Right.
was.
And so, all the average in town might have gone up. That does not mean that every home in Berlin has gone up 20% in value. Some have gone up more. We've added some more expensive properties. And so if someone's individual home has not gone up much, this actually they might have something close to an even tax bill as they did last year.
Correct. Yes, that's the way it's supposed to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
When you do it, and the commercial is very hard to do an average on, so that's why I put in
Right.
the average because of the Highland Commons with Cabela's and the mall. And
Yeah.
we have too many Highland Commons. So, the mall is the commercial rate's going down. There's just not that much out there.
Good.
But
Yep.
I did, back to that Word document.
All right, hold please. Hold please, your phone call is important. All right, hang on. Where do I put it? All right, holding. Keep talking, Molly, I'll catch up with you.
Okay, so the Warren Group is a big publisher of real estate values. They put out a newspaper every week, I think it is. So in February of 22, they reported that in FY21, the median sale price rose to 510, up 14% from 2020, but this is statewide. And it was also the first time that the median year end price exceeded 500,000. Condominium sales were, they were up and then they were down, and
That wasn't meant towards you, Molly. That was my screen just went "Woo," and it stopped sharing. Keep talking.
okay, I didn't see it because I was looking
Oh,
at my
that's right.
notes. So, and they also do individual towns. So if you go down to that bottom. So this is what the one with the December percent change. That's for the
Mhm.
state. Down the bottom is for Berlin. So the median sale price has gone up 22.9%. Why when I do this, it moves everybody around, but anyhow, so it's just 2021 sales were just still going up. And I know that it has slowed somewhat towards the end of 2022, but we won't be reflecting those values until this time next year. So we're always 18 months behind actually what's going on because we have to use sales that have taken place.
So,
I'm sorry, Peg.
no, go ahead, Kevin. I'm trying to look for a document. Go ahead.
So we can or cannot advise or move forward or have the select board move forward with the actual factor tonight.
Well, they can, I think that Scott pretty much understands that you're not picking a tax rate, you're picking the shift.
Correct.
And
So-
the shift was 49% last year, and you can only go up to 150 right now. So you either split it, you don't split it. If you vote no to a split, it means that you're voting a single rate. You're not just voting to, you're not saying no to the split. You're not saying no to that specific split of, like, if you did 50%, the tax rate would be 1403. If you vote no to that, then it's a single tax rate of 1576 for everybody, which means that the commercial will be paying way less and the residential will be paying way more.
Yeah, but we've had a split rate for years though,
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
Right, and we can
Right.
vote on other numbers between no allocation and a 50% split as well.
Yeah,
Right,
Right,
but
my
if you vote,
my-
but a no vote just means that you're not gonna do the split. For some reason, a lot of people were getting confused on this, so they wanted us to explain it, that if one person votes no and two people vote yes, then the person who vote no voted not to split. They voted
Right.
for the single rate. Not just, people were getting confused that maybe they wanted to do a 43% split and other people wanted to do a 50. That's what they wanted us to explain.
right.
Did I
Right, so
explain
when
it
we,
correctly?
when we vote on whether or not to have a split rate at a percentage, I mean, it could also mean that, let's say, you know, what if we ended a motion to vote on and a split of a percentage that we didn't all agree on, that could, as long as we vote on some percentage before we're done, then the tax rate won't be 1576, it'll be closer to whatever shift that we agreed to.
Correct.
And Molly, what is it now? Sorry, I was busy like looking and trying to find things. What is it now?
1563.
1560 is the rate, and it's a 49% shift from in fiscal year 22. That's the,
Okay.
I don't know, brownish
Oh, down here.
box is, yep.
Right, but the rate gets impacted by values, so the rate does not
Right,
necessarily
right.
correlate to how high your taxes are going to be. And if I can clarify one thing too, Molly, if I understand correctly, you're looking for the vote on the split tonight. We have a little bit more work to do on the actual numbers and coming back and looking at overlay, new growth, the information that, you know, we've gathered from finalizing up the recap sheet, looking at next year's budget. And that will play a key factor in actually finalizing that rate itself.
Right, the rate, they vote to do the 50% shift, whatever that
We
rate
can
is.
vote on
after
any
you put all
percentage
that
we want.
stuff
We do
in.
not have to vote on 50%. You just keep saying 50% split. And I want to be clear that we can vote on any percent of split that we believe is appropriate.
Yes, correct.
That's correct, Scott. I just wanted to clarify that, you know, it's the split itself, just there is more factors that need to be taken into account to look at what the actual final rate is and how that's going to impact the overall tax bill increase.
Right. But I believe these numbers are relatively close. You're not talking about like, you're not within, you're within percent or two of the real number. You're not wildly off, are you?
No. Like I said, when I did this presentation on the 3rd, based on the figures that we had at that time, the single rate would have been 1576. Oh. Am I looking at the wrong one again? Nope.
Am I on the wrong sheet, Molly?
That's
I'm,
the one I have as well.
This one, Scott?
Yep.
Okay.
Is she looking at the
wait a
screen?
second.
She can't see the screen, I don't think.
I
But
can see the screen, but I was looking at my screen to make sure I had. Well, I have to turn around. Hold on.
So are the assessors going to have a recommendation for us, or is Kristen going to have a recommendation for us?
Or are those the motion sheets that we need to decide on?
The motion sheet's all blank in that specific spot. What I have for the motion sheet is the legal wording of how to word the motion. But we
Right.
fill in the shift.
Number, yeah.
So I've redone this so many times, I don't know where I'm at anymore, quite frankly, right now. So if you bring up that spreadsheet with all the,
Hang on, keep talking.
with the 100, you know, where I did it out by one.
The Excel spreadsheet?
Yes,
All right, got it. Bum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum. This one?
yes.
Okay,
So as of this afternoon, if we had a single rate, it would be 1588. And if you go way down the bottom to the highlighted last few, it would be anywhere from 1433 to 1414. Am I reading that? It's small.
1431 to 1414. $14.31 is the 45% split, and then $14.13 is the 50.
So, and when I did the presentation on the 3rd, the single rate was 1576. So it changes by cents. Did I put everyone to sleep?
No. Trying to get back to what I had for the. So Chris and Peg, do you have other questions? And then, go ahead. And then Molly, the assessors, or even Kristen, is there a recommended shift you feel is in your opinions, the best interest?
It's a tough call. I'm glad I'm not on your board. When values start to fluctuate so much, it makes it really tough to estimate anything.
I
Right,
think what,
because again, even though the average price went up 20, average valuation went up 20%, that is not that you have added a valuation of 20% to everyone's values in town. Some
No.
valuations went up more and some went up less.
Correct.
Yep.
And so even if we decided we like the 45% street, that does not mean that everyone's taxes in town are going up by $786.32. Some will go up more and some will go up less, because again, it's going to be based on the valuation of your property and based on how much the assessed value might have changed between fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23.
Correct.
So without all our information, can we table this meeting to one more time?
do we need to?
I hope we
So-
don't need to if you know what you want to do for the split, because we're
Right.
getting close to the end of October and
Yeah,
And our
Right.
next meeting right now is scheduled.
Is November 1st.
1st.
right.
So we'll all be getting a Christmas present in the mail.
I'm returning mine.
Christmas bill.
Hopefully with payment.
Molly, if I can, we talked about the impact, obviously, of the shift on the residential values. Can you talk to me a little bit about any detriment you see in having a higher shift go to commercial?
well, usually the boards, the select boards, I said that right, focus is to keep the taxes stable,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to be stable this year because commercial went down I know it's only 5%, but it's such a bigger valuation for this small number of parcels that we have, that if you do it at the 45% thing, their tax bill is going to go down $10,000 in tax dollars. So there's not really an average. I did do the
Right.
average between Highland Commons and the mall, so they're almost.
And it's also because, again, their tax bills might be going down, but that's also because their investment in property that they own has also gone down substantially.
Correct. So Highland Commons and the mall are two top taxpayers. And then the apartments. And then public utilities. So that's, they are our two highest taxpayers, and they have been.
And that legally, we're not allowed to do a shift of more than 50%. And so if we did a 50%
Right.
shift, it doesn't allow us to do any more of a shift next year.
Well, I can look into that, but the problem will be if you do more and the value goes
I know.
away from commercial more, it's gonna be more of a reflection on the taxes for
Yep.
the residential.
So I guess the question I was trying to get at, Molly, is the difference between, say, like a 45% shift and a 50% shift. Obviously, you're talking about $100, give or take, for the increase on a residential tax bill. Is there any reason, in your opinion, to not go for a higher shift? In terms of, would it impact the commercial in a way that you would think would be detrimental? Because in my
No.
opinion, you're trying to keep the residential tax rate low, as you just said.
Yes, it's a policy that we've all, or not the policy, but the feeling that we've all had even during the budget cycle over the last few years is to try and keep the values stable, so it's not going up and down all the time. So now that the shift is coming back away from commercial, I don't know how that's gonna pan out in the future.
Well, I think with the, reduced values on the commercial side, that is going to cause a little bit of, unevenness.
Yes,
But if you're asking for my recommendation, I would think you would want to go with a higher shift so that would impact the residents less. And obviously, there's still a positive impact happening over here on the commercial side. There's just the question of, do you want to have more or less?
Well, some of it for me, though, is if we did the 50% shift this year, it takes away our ability to increase the shift next year when this problem is likely to continue.
And I guess my only point to that is I think there are other factors that would play into it that would balance out that need for going to any different level of shift. And it's looking at the recap sheet and some of that data that we just don't have finalized yet, which I know makes it difficult to make a decision.
Scott's right. If you go to the one, I would have to do a little research if you can go higher than the 150. But like I said, I know that it keep going. This happened a few years ago, but I guess it was back in the 80s, end of the 80s, 90s, where everyone was shifting at 175% and the bottom dropped right out of commercial property and it all went back. They had to have special legislation passed because it was Boston, Quincy, it was all the big cities that had done it. So I get
Yeah.
leery about wanting to increase it in a market that's not
Yep.
stable.
That's fair.
So
Um,
Scott-
Molly,
Scott,
can
how
can
are
I
you?
say something?
Sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Kevin.
The side maybe we don't see is some of these places are filed for an abatement. And so if they feel as though their taxes are too high, most of these big I guess, big boys file every year. And that can be an entanglement in the office, and then they always gonna drag us into court to fight this. So if you, and I'd hate to say it, but this year they may have the figures to back their abatement. So,
Well, we've been watching that carefully, so, yes,
Yeah.
they can file, but they shouldn't be filing because their taxes are too high. They should be filing because we have our assessment incorrect. So we did
Yeah.
lower, we had to lower their value because there was not the income that was usually coming in. So hopefully they would think that we did that fairly, but you're right, they'll probably file again because once a tax rep gets a hold of something, they just file year after year.
And then Chris, you had a question?
No, I was just gonna ask you and Peg how you were feeling. What numbers were you thinking?
Peg, do you want to go first?
No,
Okay. I have gone as we've given more information, I've gone all over the place a little bit between sort of 45 and 50. I feel reluctant to hit 50 just because I do think that limits our options later on. I think I've been talked out of 45. In that I think it feels like too much of a tax break at the commercial and for not enough benefits on the taxpayer side. And I try to go back to, as you point out, it's about $100 difference for an average taxpayer between 45 and 50 anyway. I'm tending towards either 48 or 49, and in some respects, more like 49 a little bit, only because with everything else changing, if we keep the shift the same, maybe at least one part of this moving formula is not moving as much.
Just extracting.
Chris,
Peg?
what about you?
I was thinking more like either 50% or 49.
I'd have to say I'm probably here with Scott, 45 and 48.
I thought he said 48 and
I said
49.
48 or 49.
Oh, all right, well,
You're 45 or 48?
I'll do, God, I hate this part of the job.
For the higher increase? 45 would be higher than,
Right,
no,
45,
I don't,
45 is more to the tax, it's more to the
yeah,
residential.
and that's just it. I don't want to keep sticking it to the taxpayer because it's,
Right,
you know, read the news, inflation, food, oil,
Right, yep.
gas. We need to do what we can do.
Sure.
And as I've heard multiple times, we have no services, yet our taxes keep going up. So,
well, and it's likely to be a challenging budgeting year for the coming year for those same
Yeah.
reasons, our employees and our vendors and our utilities, all the same. And so the higher the number, the lower the residential folks
impact.
pay. And
Yeah.
so are we coalescing around like a 49 then?
I could do 49. But because the real estate for residential went up 20%,
Yeah, the rate's going down a lot. Some people are
Yeah.
gonna see a tax cut at any of these numbers because their property didn't go up much.
I hate to give a lot of people a higher tax bill than we have to.
Right, which is your argument for 50.
Right.
And then Peg, are you really still at like a 45 or 48?
No, I'm leaning more towards 48. And I
Okay,
know it's a marginal,
right, but it's about
Yeah.
between where Chris is at and where you're at is about a $40 a year more
know.
in taxes for the average person. Again, there's probably a handful of people who are active, but there's a lot of people properties have gone up more and some people's have not gone up as much. And
Right.
people, properties are worth more than 558 and people who's worth less than are 560.
Correct.
Uh,
I think Molly's right too, that next year it'll catch
Right.
up with us in a different way.
Yep.
So trying to keep the tax bill level, you don't want to go all the way to 45. You want to stick with like 49 or 50, I'm guessing.
No, I won't go 50. I'll do 48 or 49. And Scott, you said 48?
I said 48 or 49 as well.
All right,
And so it could be that 49 is a little low for Chris and a little high for you and we make it happen.
I,
Ooh,
I
no.
all
would-
right.
I could do 49.
So let me find my piece of paper. Well, I say piece of paper. I don't actually have.
You don't have any paper, do you?
No, I don't have. Tax classification hearing motions. So let's see. I just have the notes here. The select board must determine a tax levy paid by each tax property. To do this, residential factor must be adopted. The residential factor of 1 would maintain the single tax rate, which we will not, right? And so I think the motion would be then that I move the board vote a residential factor of 1.49. Is that the correct motion, assessors and a town administrator?
49%, and I will translate that back to the way the computer likes it.
Okay. And this now vote is this is a pure select board vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So you
And
made
so
the motion?
I have no problem making the motion. So I move the board vote a residential factor of 49%.
Second,
Is there more discussion on it? Then Hawkins, aye.
Keith, I.
Stone Eye.
And then a residential exemption will shift the burden from owner occupied to non-owner occupied. Typically, we have not done this because we have so many owner occupied units in this town that it makes our things more complicated significantly and does not really save a lot of money to the owner occupied units. And so I would make a motion that the board votes to not adopt a residential exemption.
Okay, second,
Sorry, I was waiting for another because I'm not used to making motions myself. I think that's the discussion then. So Hawkins, aye.
Keith, I.
Stone Eye.
The select board may approve an exemption of up to 10% for small business with employ less than 10 employees. And assessed value must be less than $1 million. If I remember correctly, right, there's about in the low 30s number of impacted,
There was 27 this year.
27 impacted properties, but we typically have voted to approve that.
At
Up to
10%.
10%, and we've typically approved it at 10%. And so I would like to move that the select board vote a 10% small commercial exemption.
Second,
Sorry, well, but the fourth one, I get this right. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, I.
Stone Eye.
Let's see, starting with the 2012, after a vote of town meeting, the assessors have classified chapter land as open space. This chapter land parcel is a discount of being taxed as opposed to the commercial rate. And we have typically done that for this town. And so I would move that the select board vote to adopt an open space discount,
Not
Sorry.
adopt,
not adopt.
correct. You voted at town meeting for the chapter land to get the open space, so you don't,
Oh, so
You
we
don't-
don't have to do others. See, this is why we have you folks on here, to stop you from making mistakes that would
yes.
hurt a whole bunch of folks. So I
because-
move the board not adopt an open space discount.
Second,
Hawkins, aye.
Keith, I.
Stone Eye.
And then I'm supposed to close the hearing, but I don't have.
And,
the.
and I'm just supposed to let you know that I'm sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Excess levy is about 1.6
1.6 million for excess levy?
so far. I don't know how that changes when we get all our approvals
Right.
from.
Right. Well, I'll have conversations about that. I've always been a big strange
Yes.
proponent for underrides, but that's not tonight's hearing or conversation, and we can chat about that later. And there'll be, because of the inflation, there'll be a lot of times that have no excess levy capacity and are going to be really hurting when it comes to setting their budgets this year. But is there anything more I have to say besides that I think our hearing is complete and that I close the tax classification hearing for this year?
Sounds good to me.
Scott,
Yes.
I know you took the vote. Sorry, it happened a bit quickly. I didn't know if you wanted to ask if anybody from the public had questions.
I should have said more. I was keeping my eye open for hands. I didn't see any like during it. You're right. I did not ask specifically during it, but. And so I thank the Board of Assessors for their work. I thank Molly for your work. I know that this is a moving and lots of numbers that are interacting with each other on a variety of different planes. It's like a 4D model where you're trying to, herd sand into a box that's running around.
Or nail
cats.
jello to a tree.
Nail jello to a tree. That's pretty good too. And so I thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My issue, Peg, is having the document on my upper screen that you also shared on my upper screen. I'm like, that's still Peg's screen up there, but it's not Peg's. My screen is version of Peg's. So next on the agenda.
Did you close the hearing? I'm
Yes, I did.
sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that we have the Hearst House Building Committee doing a presentation about the Hearst House. Because our creative naming conventions in town, the Hearst House Building Committee is about the Hearst House. I'm going to mute as I cough for a second. Welcome, everyone.
Yes, thank you. I don't know how much
Yeah.
of the Hearst House Building Committee is here. But hello, everybody. I'm Mary Reddington. The rest of the Hearst House Building Committee consists of Dave Westerling and Bob Blair and Rebecca Von Geldern. And we are a subcommittee of the Art and Historical Society. And I want to give you all a brief presentation if I can share my screen.
Go for it.
Of course, I just opened my screen without sharing my screen. So hold on one sec.
And then Mary, I think Rebecca and Bob Blair can be brought forward too.
Great. They actually asked me to make the presentation and will be available for questions to kind of basically try to move the process along. If it's okay with you all, I think I can do this in 6 or 7 minutes, and then we can ask questions at the end, as opposed to if you interrupt, I'll start talking long-windedly, and then we'll be here all evening. So if you want to just let me kind of get through this, then we'll talk about all your questions. So basically, thank you all for letting us present to you today. We want to talk about 3 things today. We want to talk about the history, the restoration, and the re-erection of the Hearst House. And we're really excited to be here because we think this little building has the opportunity to kind of fulfill some of the mission and vision of the different committees in town when we talk about historical importance to the town of Berlin and making sure that we preserve our history. So the Hearst House was built in 1805. It is the oldest municipal building in town, even older than the Powder House. And at the turn of the century, hearse houses were built in a lot of communities to basically support the townspeople. There weren't undertakers. It was traditionally a furniture maker or somebody in town. And so the house was built, a hearse was purchased, and the town provided this to the citizens. When times changed in 1926, the building was sold to private owners. And for those of you that know Fran Gill, it was right there on Woodward Ave as a garage for them. In 1973, the Art and Historical Society purchased the building back and placed it on the old burial ground, which it stood where it stood till 2013, when we took it down for more complete restoration. You can see we've got some pictures here for the visual learners. This is 1973. This is a old Roger Wheeler and Sons trucks and some people who I don't know, but Philip Wheeler, Doug Warbin, and Charlie Nutting putting it on the back of a truck and moving it. And this is a picture more recently taken in 2012. There was a severe hurricane which damaged the building. And that's kind of when the Art and Historical Society realized that even though we had done maintenance on the building, you know, through volunteer groups, through Eagle Scout projects, the doors were replaced, the roof was fixed, the building had been painted, that it was really time to commit to a restoration carpenter to bring the building, you know, back to where it should be and done in a more proper manner. This is a scribe building, which is different from post and beam. A scribe building means every part is unique and none are interchangeable. So when we hired restoration carpenter Tim Woolheater, he had to go in and remove every piece and tag every piece so that the building can be put back together again, like a pretty complicated jigsaw puzzle with a lot of sketches and pictures and drawings. And for those of you that don't know Tim Woolheater, he did a lot of work on the Golden Skep farmhouse. He did work on 19 Carter. He's done work for the Bullard House. And he's actually working on the Tyler family farm for the Stevenson Foundation. So he is a specialist in 17th to 19th century carpentry. Let's see, what have I got after this? So to update you where we are, you know, the building was taken down in 2013 and not much has happened the last 10 years. And a lot of that has to do with the limitations of a very small group of Art and Historical Society members that are trying to do a lot of stuff for the town. And so in December of 2021, the society met, created a small subcommittee, which is that well-named Hearst House Building Committee, to do kind of focus our time on getting the building restored and re-erected in the town. In February, a bunch of us moved the elements of the building back to Berlin. And we're grateful to Tim Wheeler and Janet Woodward of Cordelia's Farm. They actually are letting us use a secure storage container on their property behind Village Power. And so it's watertight and the building's there. And then the committee, we sat down and we, you know, created a plan. What is the vision? What is the mission? What is our recommendation for what this building should be for the town moving forward? And it's been approved by the Art and Historical Society. It's been approved by the Historical Commission. And Tim is actually back in Berlin, starting putting the building together. This week, I was there with him and we worked on the north wall. So here's a picture of a bunch of us loading some parts into this storage container in February of 2022. And in September of 2022, a bunch more of us went down there, took all the parts out again, labeled them by color and location, north wall, south wall, that sort of thing, put them back in so that Tim could basically test fit. You know, he has recreated different parts that needed to be replaced from, like, this is a 6x6 timber, and he's done the mortise and the tenon work. And now basically we're going to test fit at Cordelia's every wall to make sure that the pieces fit and make alterations for pieces that don't fit. And then the building will be transported to its final home, which we hope will be back at the old burial ground. This is a very dense document, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we all agreed would be the mission of us and of the Hearst House.
we really want to create a small historical museum in Berlin's Community Town Center. And we want to do that using this, the oldest remaining municipal building, the 1805 Hearst House, and create kind of a micro museum to present rotating exhibits of the town's collection, because the Art and Historical Society actually just works for the town and the Historical Commission. The town owns the all the product, and kind of open it up, hopefully on those special days when a lot of people are around town, whether it's Memorial Day or Veterans Day or Old Home Day or a Halloween festival or Christmas in Berlin. You know, have a staff member there, create a rotating exhibit. There'd be some pieces about specifically the Hearst House. We have some great images, and we'll have some, you know, words that are kind of so you can walk through. And then the society has created a huge list of things that, items that don't need that temperature control. And, you know, we have a whole list of things that could be presented here and wouldn't get, you know, moldy or anything, whether it's farm tools or kitchen appliances or, you know, stuff like that that could be presented and kept here for a period of time. So people could get excited about, you know, the history of the town of Berlin, you know, and the time it'll take us to possibly get the Bullard House to be kind of a more permanent, bigger museum for the town. So this sketch was done, the building was originally right here in segment A on the road. When it was reinstalled in 1973, it was at location B to get it off the road and so that salt and stuff wouldn't damage it. And, you know, our hope is that we could put it back at the same placement that it was in when it left in 2013. The reason I'm excited about this, and I wanted to just kind of point this out, is our entire town talks about history and how important history is to the town. Our website says we're a pleasing mix of past and present. The master plan, of course, I can't read it now because my pictures are all over it, but the master plan says, you know, our historic town center. The community preservation plan talks about how we recognize the stewardship of historical and cultural resources, and that the town really wants to preserve its historic resources and safeguard its history. And even the open space and rec plan talks about historic resources being preserved for future generations. So what we really like to do today is get the board's feedback and hopefully permission to re-erect it in the same place it was in 2013. The Cemetery Commission approved this in December of 2021 at one of their meetings. You know, we have an old letter from what I'm assuming was town council at the time, giving permission, saying that the building being used for educational purposes on town land would not need a zoning variance. And, you know, our hope is that we can figure out a way to make all of this work with the select board and the historical commission so that we can get this great little building kind of back in town and set up properly the way close to how it would have been in 1805. So I have another slide here that talks about, you know, post-erection ownership recommendation. But I kind of wanted to start with the conversation of, do we think it's likely that the Art and Historical Society can come to an agreement with the town to put the building back in the old burying ground? You know, use the historical preservation carpenter to get it up to the quality that we want, and then decide whether we need to shift ownership over to the town and potentially have the Art and Historical Society work on providing maintenance for the building for the next foreseeable future. That was my fast presentation. Did I speak too quick for everybody, or did you do okay?
No, you did great.
Good.
Loved it. Chris and Peg, do you have questions or comments?
Oh, sorry. Peg sent me a bunch of questions in advance. Some of that, Peg, I couldn't look into quick enough. Tim is a fully licensed and insured carpenter. I know when we brought this idea up to Margaret months ago, the former town administrator, Margaret, she had talked to the insurance company for the town who said it's not our favorite thing to put a building not owned by the town on town property. But I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to make this work, either by, once we finish kind of in our historical control of re-erecting the building, that if we wanted to, or if the town wanted to, we could transfer ownership to the town. And then do due diligence, or not, once you give us permission to re-erect it, do due diligence on talking to the insurance and answering some of those other questions that you had, Peg.
So for Chris and Scott and everybody else listening, the questions that I had sent to Mary was basically, what is the status of the ownership of the building? So Mary was kind enough to let us know that it's a private building owned by the
Art and Historical
Society. Right. I asked for a current insurance policy of the building because I just want to see what is covered now, what it does cover. Similar to the DCR building that unfortunately keeps getting graffiti tagged, that, it's a historical building and we can't go and clean it because it's a historical building. How is that going to be looked after for any type of graffiti or damage? I wanted to find out who was the guarantor of the property and was looking for a written plan on how all this was going to happen, about, where it's being constructed, where's it going to go to, who's paying for it. If not assembled, who's assembling it? Obviously, that's Tim. Then obviously there needs to be an insurance cost, because if it's getting assembled and moved and there's damage, who pays that? If it goes up and it gets damaged, who pays that? Somebody gets hurt. Obviously volunteers can't be used because it is a historical building. So it's just looking at liability. So those were just some of the top questions that I have or had for Mary. I've got many, many more after I started thinking in my head. So I'll pause and give you both an opportunity to ask your questions, and I'll pull all my notes together.
Chris?
Well, I believe Mary and Peg answered the question. The one question I was thinking of right off the bat was, who has ownership of the building? And I think, this is my first run through of the information on the Hearst House. So I don't have a lot of questions just yet. It'll take me time. Hopefully, I won't have a big, long list, but
So Mary, just to be clear, the Arts and Historical Society and the Hearst House Building Committee, you are not currently asking for any funds from the town to accomplish this task.
That is correct.
And that although there's details to be worked out, it is the intent of the Arts and Cultural Commission to sort of cover sort of operating costs for, I've heard different numbers, but at least sort of 5, 10 to 20-year range.
Yeah, the Art and Historical Society voted that if the town does want ownership, we're willing to maintain and pay for maintenance of the building for 20 years. The hope of the society is that when this is under the umbrella of the town, we're talking about a minute amount of money in terms of insuring it. It's a building that's going to be, it's 12 by 16. Its value, I'm sure we could work out with the insurance company, but as a historic building, its value probably can't be more than what we'll eventually put into it. Any liability would, I am assuming, be covered by the same sort of liability we have for anybody walking through the cemetery, that might fall and smash their head on a gravestone. It's not going to be a building that's open that kids can go into and play in. It's going to be something that's only open when it's manned by members of the Art and Historical Society, or, somebody from the town or whatever for these types of events. And so, I would be thrilled to talk with an insurance company about the level of details. You know, right now it's a bunch of timber in a shed.
Right.
So.
And that, if I remember correctly, it's probably about the same size as the announcer box that we just recently accepted a donation for at South Common. And when that was accepted as a donation, I think I asked whether or not that would have any material impact on the insurance costs of the town of Berlin, and was told it was not. And so I can imagine that if something that is up a little bit in the air had no really material impact that this probably will also have no material impact on our insurance rates of the town. And then,
Scott,
go ahead, Kristen.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott. Go ahead.
I was about to ask you a question as well, that is my understanding that does the select board actually have say over what the cemetery commission does and does not do with their land?
I guess the question would be, in my experience, and I'd have to look at the way the parcels work, the town would still own the land, even though the operation of the committee is granted toward the operation or custodialship of the actual property is granted towards the cemetery commission. So when you think about insurance, the first thing that came to my mind was, it would need to be, the town would have to be listed as like an additional insured, which is something that can be done. That's not typically a problem. But you would want that because, the historical commission as a nonprofit, should something happen, someone get injured, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just about the property itself, but, they'll come after the town because the town is the one with the deep pockets. So
Right.
that's where that piece comes in.
Right.
Mhm.
My question about materials is that like, if the cemetery commission decided to build a tool shed in one of their properties, they do not need select board approval to do that. Just like they don't need our approval to sell a plot of land to someone to put a gravestone into.
I don't know.
It's a great question. In my prior experience, the select board is they are the overseers of all town-owned property. So any improvements, modifications to town-owned property typically would come through the select board. I mean, I'll give you an example. We had a park in town in my previous community, and the snowmobile club wanted to put a trailer on there for some of their equipment. And, they did basically get permission from the park committee as well as the select board to make that change. So I just don't know what the agreement is between the select board and the cemetery commission.
And then I got to be careful. Because I don't believe a joint meeting was called between us and the historic commission.
No.
was
But
not.
if there's a way to call, there are a member in the audience, if there's one of them could be allowed to speak. I just want to hear what that Mary has said they have recommended us to approve this and move forward. I'd be great to hear that firsthand. Not that I don't trust you, Mary. I'm quite sure it is true from everything I know.
That's
But
fine.
I think it'd be great for the record to hear formally from a member of the cemetery, from the historic commission, their belief in this. And I think June is who is getting nominated to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm having a little trouble with my video here.
That's fine. Audio is fine.
Okay. The commission is in full support of having the building, first of all, re-erected in the old burying ground in that B position that you saw on the little map. And we are in full support of having ownership transferred to the town once it has been re-erected. Is there anything else to add to that?
That was fine for me. Peg or Chris, you.
Yeah, Mary, and maybe June too. I have questions. So thank you for putting the screen back up. I was going to ask for it to go. So B is where you want it to go, correct?
E is
B.
actually where it was from 1973 to 2013, and that is where we would like to re-erect it in the same place, correct?
So is that the spot where there's a bunch of fallen down headstones that haven't been fixed? So is there a plan to fix those headstones first?
That is-
before the building goes up?
That is not where there are fallen down headstones. The space is actually clear. We've walked it. Bob Blair actually had Paul Wheeler go out and take a look at it. Because one of our issues or concerns is, although the building inspector has told us, based on a brief conversation that, or an email that I had with him, that the building does not need to be ADA accessible. It is something that we would like to make moderately accessible to people. So we've talked about a land ramp. The land actually from the road here goes down. And that, Paul and people who can speak better to this than I can, but, we did talk about, Dave Westerling is a civil engineer, putting together a site plan so that, we could be more detailed about it. But yes, creating a gravel path with a land ramp that could access the building, which would be sitting on granite posts. So that you could walk or, with a walker or push a wheelchair, not perfectly, but down that direction. So no, the headstones are not close to where this is. They're a little further over here. And when you're standing in the area, they're not on top of you at all.
So Mary, you had talked about putting this into a museum, and you had mentioned that there would be, or could be, non-climate controlled items. So are you saying that there is no need for heat or electricity or air conditioning for that building?
Yes, we have not talked about doing anything like that at all. We would do, battery powered lanterns if it was a winter day and it was dark, with possibly, we could do a generator with space heaters. We are not talking about putting electricity into this building at all at this point. And I honestly don't imagine, unless there's a huge interest and the Bullard House project gets slowed down to the point where people really get excited about it. In which case, that would be a whole different ballgame for us to come to you guys and talk about putting power in the building.
Kristen, a question for you. In one of Mary's slides, she had brought up 1972 that had gone to town council. Given that was 50 years ago, I'm going to assume that many things have changed in the past 50 years and that this really should go by town council first. Not to say that, town council 50 years ago wasn't spot on, but things change far too much to have that gap of time.
I mean, there have been new statutes, obviously, and changes to law. If it's in reference specifically to the actual siting of the house itself, I was actually just trying to look through some old emails to see if I could find an answer to that. And there is an email I do see saying that the insurance company did have concerns, so we would need to look a little bit into that. But that the select board do have authority under MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A.5 to accept personal property on behalf of the town. That is under the sole discretion and authority of the select board. The cemetery commissioners governing statutes do not provide the same authority. So the last email that's in here was just recommending, obviously, having a discussion between, the cemetery commission and the select board. Once this is decided, the direction of this is decided.
So Mary, you're saying that in no way is the town going to be responsible for any cost. So that means if a window breaks, the town isn't going to pay to get it fixed. If there's graffiti on it, we're not going to pay to get it fixed. If there's something wrong, the shingle blows off, we're not going to pay to get it fixed. So it's not an additional burden to the town, or I'm going to assume to a short-staffed highway department to take part in this in any way.
Yes, and I say that with the parenthetically that if ownership is transferred to the town, if that's something that between the town, the cemetery commission, the historical commission, and the select board decide that the ownership will go to the town, the Art and Historical Society has recommended that you all pay for, the insurance, and that the Art and Historical Society has said that for 20 years, because that's what we voted for, we just threw out 20 years that we would pay maintenance. And so, yes, there are no windows, so a window can't be broken. Graffiti, definitely. Shingles, definitely.
Security.
Yeah, Peg, I'll be shocked if this is not like a rounding error given the size of the town's budget for what it would be to add this building to insurance. Because you know, when you think about what the town spends overall, and you know, maybe it is something that we go to community preservation for to pay for the insurance instead, if that's something that the town or you are against. I'm not authorized to speak for the society beyond what they voted, but obviously we want to make this work. We think this little building is very important to bring back. I think it'd be great for the Art and Historical Society to have a win and a positive reopening of something in town that has all this great history. And, you know, like I showed on that slide, the town talks constantly about history and preserving its resources and, you know, future generations and talking about the past. And I can't think of a way to get young people more excited about the history of the town of Berlin than to open a little cool building like this.
So I am thinking that a motion we would be looking for potentially tonight would be to sort of authorize staff and to try to negotiate a more formal, you know, I's dotted, T's crossed agreement that we as select board might put some parameters around, and that with the idea that once that is done, that we would potentially have another vote about whether or not we think as a select board that got to the various concerns that we have raised tonight. Chris and Peg, is that where you think this might be going?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's still a lot of unanswered questions, you know, especially around insurance, around legal. And it's, you know, Mary, and I appreciate this, but I truly am more of a visual learner and would love to really see, you know, maybe to what Scott alluded to, a step-by-step plan of it's moving, so-and-so is moving it, it's moving when. Oh, question, Mary, does the ground need to be prepped at all, or are you going to place a building on lawn?
No, the
During
ground would need to be
class.
prepped. One of the things we would like permission, if the select board is considering this, is to do a survey and you know, go out, and Paul Wheeler has already looked at it generally. The problem going forward, Peg, as you might imagine, is, you know, a year ago I called Margaret and I said, hey, because you know, I really wasn't thinking about town logistics. I said, hey, can I talk to the town's insurance person? Because I want to get an idea of what it would cost.
Yeah.
And that started, as you might imagine, a huge kerfluffle about how, you know, I was kind of going around. I was like, I didn't mean to skip steps. So we're here presenting to you. I can't get any idea about what it would cost to insure the building through the town without talking to the town. So
Right.
it's,
And again,
it's-
we have accepted buildings of this size and was told that it was an inconsequential dollar amount for insurance. I think there's a lot of other issues that are definitely worthy of going. It sounds like that the Historic Preservation Commission is recommending that we actually accept this as a donation. And I imagine that there'll be some sort of agreement that says, you know, the town will, the town, again, assuming there's support, but that we'd accept a donation, you know, with these sort of parameters, and it's these parameters that are going to be worked out in agreement. And that it really is in some respects up to the Arts and Cultural Commission and thus the
Art and Historical Society.
and the building committee, the Hearst Building Committee, to figure out the logistics of how it gets to a point where we would accept the donation. I think the town might put parameters on it, you know, that we want to make sure that it is, you know, done right, the ground has been prepped, that the right sort of insurance stuff, but that, you know, if I am less concerned, like, well, I am concerned, I don't want someone hurting themselves, but if someone got hurt during an arts and historical society event, you know, that it's sort of on them and not as much the town. I think we're right. We probably want some sort of legal review of the building code stuff. We've accepted several donations this year of things. I think this is no bigger or smaller than some of the other donations that we accepted, especially when the commission that we've created as a town to advise the select board on things has said that this is something that they would like us to do.
Hey, Scott, can you hear
Yes.
me? Hey,
Yes,
Dave Westerling here. I just wanted to reinforce what Mary said about, you know, the site plan. And we would like permission to go on the site and do a little bit of survey work and just come up with a site plan. So we've got a better idea, you know, visually of what the building is going to look like on the site. So, and it would just help us in these presentations. So we'd like permission to go on the site and do some survey work. And I think that's the other thing in that motion. If you could say, you know, we should move forward on that site plan.
Scott, if I can add, I haven't had an opportunity to look at what the custody agreement is, or if there is one between the cemetery commission and the board. I would just caution that the board, you know, would want to collaborate with the cemetery commission and just make sure that, you know, you're not giving permission just solely for them to come on the cemetery commission site, because they are actually operating the site. So I'm not advising against it in any way. I just want there to be some coordination there.
Right. I also do not know a rule that would stop any person from walking on cemetery land with a ruler and measuring things. I'm on cemetery lands very regularly because I like old and historic cemeteries and have ancestors buried in Old Town Cemetery. And so I like visiting them every now and then. And I don't feel I necessarily need permissions for that. I think before you alter anything on, say, like if you're doing any leveling or any of that, you definitely would require it stuff. And we might think at some point when we go to sort of decide if we're going to approve that something that has I's dotted and T's crossed, that it's jointly with the cemetery commission. So that it is clear that everyone is on the same page by the time we do it. I'm just at 8:30 trying to figure out where the like step is to make it clear to the historic commission and to the historic society, arts and historic society and their Hearst House Building Committee, sort of the directions and what next steps are or would be, especially since I think if we're going to have an agreement on both ownership and other stuff, that it would take some staff time, probably likely yours, Kristen, and that obviously you should be working on things under a motion of the select board and not just because any one of us wants something to happen, and try to figure out where we put, again, I don't want this to be a giant time sink for you either. And so trying to figure out where we put parameters on this bucket so that you have some good guidance and actually everyone present, including people watching, have good guidance on what we think, what are things that should be included in such agreement.
If I may make a suggestion, Scott, and this might
Yep.
be helpful. I think you're talking about what's called a care, custody, and control agreement that would be joint between Historical Society, Cemetery Commission, and the Select Board. And that's something that could be drafted up by legal counsel. And that could address the insurance, that could address citing, you know, everything along those lines of what we've been speaking about.
And I'd almost want, before it went to legal counsel, I would love it to come back to us for a vote on just the broad stroke points, because I don't want legal counsel spending time and money, you know, reading the wording of a sentence that we get in front of the group of us. We go, oh my goodness, one of us or a group of us, you know, don't like the wording of that sentence. So I think if we do a broad stroke thing here that comes back, that has that also gives some direction so that the people who are doing the volunteer work realize that their time and energy is going to be, you know, rewarded at the end potentially as well. Peg, I think I've been noting you writing some things down. I'm hoping that some of these sort of broad strokes we might want them to work out the finer points of, you have some stuff put together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You could share it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been taking notes and scribbles from my questions. I can run it by you guys, share with you guys first, of kind of like where my thoughts and questions are to come back. As I said, I love the presentation. We can always go back to the playback, but you know what? I want to be able to, present something that's written that everyone can look at and agree upon so that there's no, oh, I didn't understand it that way. And just to answer the multitude of questions, that are out there. So I'm happy to type something up and send it off to you
I
guys.
was, yeah. I think it's something that might be ready.
So,
and
so can I
struck for a
just ask
motion
one-
now. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna ask the question if, as I'm thinking about this, is it maybe more appropriate for us to do a resolution rather than a motion? Saying that we are going to do our due diligence. We all agree we'd like to move forward with this.
I am fine as long as that's clear that allows Kristen to spend some time on this. That's what just the one reason is that I was hoping for a motion that says we direct staff to work with the Cemetery Commission, Historic Commission, and Arts and Cultural Society through their Hearst House Building Committee to draft a memorandum of understanding, Kristen, I've already spaced the words you used, but sort of a care custody agreement
Yep.
For the Hearst House that so if I'm starting to make it, as a whole, we really believe that the Hearst House has a historic value to the town, that we would generally like it to be reassembled on sort of somewhere on town land, or actually specifically in the where what had sat for 50 years, and have these areas that we would like to make sure are covered in this agreement, to make sure that we have limited some of the liabilities of taxpayers, and that all the appropriate sort of, again, I's are crossed and T's dotted from a building commissioner, a setback, other sort of pieces, and including some of the stuff that Peg has raised. And so that because generally we'd like to go forward, but we still have some of these concerns that need to be worked out in a more formal agreement, and that we direct, the various parties to, sit down in a meeting or two to see if they can come up with something that makes everybody amenable.
But I don't think that they can come up with an agreement, with a memorandum of agreement, until they see all our questions, because what's the point in Mary and company spending oodles of time writing up something, and then here come our flood of questions that they haven't hit. So
And I thought this presentation was to give us a chance to give us those questions. Because they also don't want to go back and spend a lot of time if, as a whole, we don't believe that this is something we should be accepting as a town under any circumstances.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go for it, Kristen.
So Peg, you've got things written up, I've got things written up. And I think Mary, you've had previous discussions with the former town administrator. I think we could get a list together of items that need to be addressed. I actually have a draft care, custody, and control agreement that hits on what those points are that should be discussed in that type of an agreement. So it wouldn't have to go to legal counsel. We would just go through and kind of dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure we're hitting on all of those marks. So I don't know if that would work for you all.
And I'd like to hear from town council if this is the best way to go.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, there might be other options, for example,
Sure.
leasing the land to the Art and Historical Society for $1 every year or something.
okay.
Rather than the town taking on, I mean, these are just sort of things that I'm starting to think about, because this is my first, talk about the Hearst House.
So Kristen, do you want me to type up my questions and send them to you and Scott and Chris, and then you mush them with yours, and then we come back together and then get them over to Mary and company?
Absolutely. I just want to put one caveat out there. We are in budget season right now, so
know.
it's a little bit of a time crunch situation, but I
Yeah.
can certainly work on this if that's the pleasure of the board. I'm happy to do so. I just will need a little bit more time this time of year.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
and
All right.
so do we need a motion, Scott, or
No,
I
I
think we have a direction.
personally speaking sort of less as chair and more as member, would love to have us leave this meeting with a motion that says we would like to support, generally, having the Hearst House reassembled for the town because it's an important historical icon. I have no problem with caveat saying, that there are still some things to be worked out, that this is not necessarily this was under no circumstance a final vote on it, but that I really think this is an important thing for the town. I would like the people who've been putting a lot of incredible volunteer time to try to get this out of a backyard in Ware, Massachusetts, back into the town and put together a plan to actually get it reassembled, are supported, because this is the type of stuff we want, volunteer led, outside stuff, no taxpayer involved at this point, to preserve our town's history. I think it's just really important.
You want me to say so moved? Was that your motion?
It is the motion. I want to make sure that, again, the motion is
No,
not that we
basically,
accept
I
it
mean,
as
it
a
would be
donation.
it would be the same thing as a resolution saying that
Yep.
we agree that we'd like to move forward with this, and now we need to figure out how.
Yep,
Okay,
that's even a simpler way of putting it, that we like the Hearst House, that you like the idea of the Hearst House going back, and that we would like people to proceed in figuring out the hows,
right,
to make sure that what works in theory does actually work in practice.
okay.
So
So-
if you liked, you could direct the town administrator to work with the cemetery commission and the Hearst House Commission to explore this further.
Yep, and the Historic Commission as well.
Historic Commission, yes, of course.
And Hearst House Building Committee.
Hearst House Building Committee. Sorry, I'm still trying to get my lingo down here.
All right, so
Where are you on such a resolution?
me,
Where am I?
Yeah, Peg on a
Oh.
resolution that sort of directs staff to figure out the hows and whys.
No, I'm not there. I have too many questions in my mind to move forward with this. So I'm a no on moving forward with any type of motion until we can get our stuff together and our information together and we find out a little bit more. So I'm no.
okay, so,
And because again, I still feel that without a vote of the select board, that Kristen is not directed to spend her time on this and that we're not actually then supporting, trying to find a way to get the answers to your questions.
And I understand that, but as Krista pointed out, as we're moving into finance season and she's still getting her feet wet, as much as it might be nice to have this back in Berlin as an older building, I think in terms of priorities that this is, for me personally, this is not on my list of high priorities to address now.
I think that's pretty disappointing, given that the town does talk so much about its history and the importance of its history. And I would like to know, Peg, is it anything beyond financial?
No, I mean, Mary, it's just, there's just a bunch of questions that I have, finance. It will always be at the top of my concern is finance. And then, of course, as you talked about, it's always going to be upkeep. We are not in a position in any way, and I know you talked about a 20-year lease or a 20-year agreement where you're going to take that over, but this is something that can't be shifted to any department in town. There is zero capacity for somebody to even spend 5 minutes on this. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying no, not now. That I think that there's other critical items that we need to focus on. And unfortunately, to me, and I could be standing alone in a field and that's fine. To me, this is not a critical item that needs to take up any of Kristen's time.
I am then gonna second Chris's motion. And I think we'll just end up voting it won't be unanimous, but we'll get it out. And it's a resolution to help to again, direct some time. I think Peg is right. The budget will still is still an important priority out there. But it's to help sort of figure out some of these pieces and to come back to us.
yeah, I think it deserves a little bit of time just to look into it. I think we need to respect Kristen's ability to look at that, especially during budget time.
Um,
And we will try to be respectful of that time and get the answers, as quick as we can.
Dave Westerling here, again, if we could move forward with the site plan and some of these background materials that would help answer some questions, and if we could get a list of questions from Peg and others that we could start working on. I mean, it's gonna take some time to put this Hearst house together over at Cordelia's farm. So in the meantime, and then we can schedule another meeting with the board when we get some more answers. And this was just an introduction, Chris, Keith. This is the first time. We didn't expect a lot of decisions to be made tonight, but it would be good for us to move forward with a site plan and get some of these issues out on the table and answer any questions that you've got. And I think both Mary and I would be really happy to field those questions and get some feedback and begin the discussion.
And again, Dave, I don't know how much you need a select board approval to work on a site plan, because again, I think anyone could walk into the cemetery with a ruler and measure things and design things. I don't think that is but it is public land that is open to folks to enjoy. And the enjoyment could be measuring widths and heights, and because there are some footing stones that were there when it was removed that I know have shifted and are not, and again, not changing anything in the cemetery, but at least measuring things out.
Understood. And as long as we've discussed it with you, and I think that's the big first step. And so I'll begin doing a site plan and have that ready for the next meeting when we gather.
So two things. Mary, could you be so kind to send the presentation along? Because I know you answered a bunch of my questions. So what I want to do is put my question and then kind of like put your information there. So we just have an entire list of them.
Would you
that
would you
be
like it
great.
electronically or in paper, Peg?
Oh, electronically. I like to mark things up all over the place.
Okay.
And Scott, I don't know if you see it, but Mary Porter has her hand up in the audience.
Sorry. Yes, Mary?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm muted. Press.
Yeah, you're great.
You're good.
Audible? Yeah, okay. Just a couple of quick points. I'm listening to Peg, and I'm also on the Finance Committee, so I'm acutely aware of the whole financial question here. But and I've been a member of the Art and Historical Society, although I don't show up that often. But I do. I show up enough to know that there were funds earmarked for just this here house, the Hearst House restoration. It was a bequest from, a lifetime citizen in Berlin, Dora Cummings. So I don't know exactly where the money falls on from that bequest to the activity that's going on with the restoration, but there's momentum right now on this project, and I'd love to see it keep, continue. And I knew Dora well; she was my neighbor around the corner, and the fact of her bequest makes this sort of special to me as a part of the history of town. It's, for me, part of the living history of this town, as well as all those people that died all those years ago and were where the Hearst House was a part of their world. So that's one point. And then for Kristen, I just wanted to tell you that I was asked to look at bylaws for, first of all, let me back up. Art and Historical Society is a 501c3 organization, so it sits privately, but its function is really to curate the donations that come into town that are of a historical sort of value. And so I view this Hearst House as really right down the middle of that sort of purpose for that society. And generally the society is curating for items owned by the town. So, like the Bullard House, it's curating just these historical items. So it is consistent with how the society as a 501c3 has collaborated with the town, in particular the Historic Commission of the town, which does the other things like determining whether a building can be demolished. Does it have the historical value that you want to maintain a building? So just for your benefit, Kristen, the two of them collaborate in that fashion. I'm happy to help you sharpen up what might be some sort of joint agreement, because I've studied the respective town bylaws and the bylaws of the society, and they do fit together nicely. And I think it's something that could be sharpened up in draft and given to town council, so you don't spend a lot of money to get it reviewed. So
Oh, I appreciate that, Mary.
yeah, so I just want to put it out there that, I'm willing. It wouldn't take me long at all to orient, and I think it's important for everybody who's in this session tonight to understand the difference between the society, and it is that the Hearst House Committee is sitting as a subcommittee of the society. So they're part of that nonprofit wing, and it's really citizens doing good things for the town. This is an important piece of the history of the town. And Peg, I get you. There's so many priorities we've got in front of us and a lot to do. But I think I really urge the select board to take advantage of the citizen momentum that we're seeing here now. The worst thing we face in the public sector is citizen apathy, and we've got people now that are really stepping up, and I'd love to see the select board encourage this activity and more of the same. So I'll stop there. I'm on a soapbox. I need to get off it. Thanks for listening.
Yep, thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
June, you had something quick you wanted to say?
Yes. I'm just wanting very much to speak up for this little building, and to speak up
Sorry.
for the Hearst House Building Committee, because their commitment to this project has been a model for the society and for the commission. And I can't say enough to promote the preservation of the little Hearst House.
Thank you, June. I think we're gonna then vote on the motion, which is to, from a high level, support generically the moving of the Hearst House and reassembling back in Old Town Cemetery, and direct sort of staff and the Hearst House Building Committee and the other Cemetery Commission and the Historic Commission to sort of work on the sort of agreement of what sounds like an accepting of the donation would look like in the parameters there around, including, sorry, Chris, directing town council to look at potentially other options besides accepting as a donation, including potentially leasing the land. And to come back when we feel that is ready for another piece. And then secondly, that Chris and myself and Peg and really others, if you have questions about this or things you would like to see included or not included, to get that over to Kristen so that it can get out to all the parties and we can make sure that next level agreement addresses as many of those as practical. And so I think it is Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, no.
I thank everyone for putting in the time to get us to the point. It was a very great presentation. Mary, we look forward to getting a copy of it for our owners. And that first picture of the Hearst House on the road, do you have a date for that picture? If you
I
include it when you
don't.
send it out, if someone can figure out about when that was taken, because that is obviously prior to the 73 when it was moved to the back.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you send the PowerPoint to all of us, Mary?
Yes, and
Okay,
the
great.
best, is it best to just send it to the generic select board email and you'll get it all from there?
I think
believe
so,
so.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you for
Thank you very
giving us
much.
time. I know that was a lot of your meeting tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town administrator report is next on the agenda.
Okay. Let me just get to the report here. Give me just a moment, please. Okay, here we go. So, we continue on with the solar project on the highway barn and received good news this week. The Select has submitted their applications for both the interconnection and the smart incentives to the state. And they expect to receive the approved interconnection agreement by mid-December. In the interim, they are going to work on the power purchase agreement, lease and notice of lease for review by the town and legal counsel. So that will be heading your way once received. The parameters of that agreement has already been discussed throughout the process of the letter of intent. So I don't imagine it will be very different. It will include the proposed rates. And that is all dependent upon the state approving the incentive program, and they'll be able to work it out from there. I wish I had as good a news about the bucket truck, but unfortunately I do not. It is headed, or actually has headed back to New Hampshire. There appears to be an issue with the build itself that is fully under warranty and being fixed, but I don't have a time frame for when that will be back. So Fred has been working with the company out of Hooksett, New Hampshire, and they have the full ability to correct the issue there. And I'll keep you posted. FY24 budget. So we set the budget calendar last week with FinCom, and we'll meet with FinCom again this Wednesday. Some of just the key deadlines that are upcoming. FY24 capital requests are due October 31st. The annual employee performance appraisals are due November 11th. The FY24 budget package is slated to be distributed November 14th. And the FY24 budget requests are due back on November 30th. So as I had mentioned before, and I mentioned in here, now that we're officially kicking off budget season, that'll be the primary focus of my efforts for the next few weeks. We'll be doing department head reviews, analyzing budget data, making projections, assembling the budget package, preparing the message. But we are underway and moving full steam ahead. So exciting times in preparing for our FY24 budget. The radio project. So you know, radios are a really unique beast in that you can ask one person how things should be done, and you can ask another, and then you can ask a third, and all three will have different opinions. So this is what we have found with the companies that we've sought quotes from. So at the recommendation of Chief Shartner, we sat down with Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch Director Ann Camaro, who has extensive experience with this. She used to work out in Cambridge in dispatch as well, and she's done some radio projects. So the recommendation and what we've decided to do is replace the existing Omni antenna system plus the cabling at this time, which is what we had previously discussed, although we were going back and forth between an Omni and a dual, and there were some concerns about how that would affect fire in terms of functionality and whether we even needed the dual at this time, which Regional Dispatch said no. They said they are eventually somewhere several 5 years down the line, looking at possibly integrating regional dispatch. That's something that would be funded either through our assessment or a grant if that ever comes to fruition. And we have an urgent public safety need with the antennas that we need to deal with now. So the rest of the system build out, Ann's recommendation, which I think is great, is to put out what's called an RFP, request for proposals, and that would allow companies to come in and basically make a recommendation to us on how we should outfit the rest of the system. This is the more costly part, which is the repeaters, the filters, and the radios. I hear filters, I think of coffee filters, but apparently they're very expensive. This is like the most expensive part of the system. So we will keep obviously an eye to the future and that potential connection to regional dispatch. And we think it'll give us a good opportunity to evaluate not only the recommendation, but the firm itself, their experience, and review references on the firm as well to make a decision. So an RFP does not have to be solely a price-based proposal. There's a more qualitative component to it as well, so that you can really pick what ultimately chooses to be or shows to be the best. I attended a lot of meetings this week. I won't go through them all, but we had some really interesting meeting at the Energy Committee, which may result in us being able to even lower our rate with National Grid, as they now have a dimulator rate, and the LED streetlights are on dimulators, which brings them down 50% after 11 p.m. And that is a cost saving measure. So I'm working with National Grid to try to get a better rate there. And the legal budget, and this is to your point earlier, Scott, the legal budget is over half expended due to a number of unexpected items, which have required town council's assistance this year. We're only a little over a quarter into, a little over a quarter into the fiscal year. However, we've expended about half. So our, rate is not great there. We have advised the FinCom that a reserve fund transfer will likely be needed this year. So it is on their radar. I'm also working on setting up a new IT services contract to cover copiers and printers at the town offices, as the current contract expires on December 31st. And as we all know, it takes a very long time to get equipment, if you're even able to get anything these days. So we're trying to get that moving. I've got some folks coming in and just giving quotes. And working with the Board of Health, they're trying to get a mattress grant up and running, and some procedures down at the transfer station. They had written up some procedures and asked that they were reviewed, and we've taken a look and provided feedback. So before I go into the open meeting law portion that I wanted to discuss with this, does anyone have any questions on that part of my report?
Go for it, Beck.
Shocking. Stop smiling at me, Kristen. So over the past couple of years, Margaret kind of asked the committees when they send their budgets back to not go over a 2.5%. I think it's 2.5. Are you looking at that as well? Or are you just entertaining, give it a go, put in what you want, and we'll cut, whack, whack, whack?
No, I want to set in some parameters. I don't have that specific number in mind. If that is the general direction the board is interested in taking, I think that's something that we should discuss. My biggest concern is the cost of inflation and the fact that, from my understanding, a lot of the operating budgets were cut during COVID. I'm concerned we may need to do a restore to pre-COVID levels, which is not so much a numbers game, but more of a restoration of, gutted revenue that was necessary due to the pandemic. And, depending on what the increases are, because as we know, in certain industries, services and equipment, those increases are far higher than in others. We'd have to look, are there specific areas in the budget that we may need to go even a little bit beyond a restoration piece? So I'm still wrapping my head around it. That's just an initial thought that I had.
Okay. And my other question has open meeting, so I'll circle back to you when you're done.
Kristen, we don't have a cost of living salary adjustment target number yet, do we, from personnel?
Not yet. The personnel board is going to meet Wednesday, and they have a deadline. I want to say it's early November to get, it might be mid-October. I don't have the calendar right in front of me. But that has not yet been discussed. I will mention it to them Wednesday and see if we can at least get some type of target number that they're looking at.
And then as much for capital planning as it is for FinCom, I would like to, as just a single member of the select board, them to consider as funding when they're looking at funding sources for capital items, that to look at some ARPA funding as a potential source, and that one of our stated goals of ARPA is potentially to preserve free cash and stabilization for sort of more critical items, potentially even later on. I would by no means want to spend all of it, but there might be a couple of projects where that makes sense or not, and they might want to consider it. And then on the your contracts for IT services, again,
Yes.
as an individual resident of town who actually professionally for my job negotiates contracts like that on a pretty regular basis, feel free to text or email me like questions you have, or if you want me to look at some of the contracts. I would not feel comfortable recommending any of my vendors as much as I love them, just because there could be a weird conflict of interest thing that I don't want to actually get into at all. But that if I saw what towns are being offered, I could let you know, like, that's what I'm seeing as well, or not what I'm seeing. So put that as a resource that's at your disposal.
That would be helpful. So we have Xerox machines right now, and we have Conway that services the machines as well as the printers. I would really want a company that can do both, obviously. But I wanted to look at Ricoh as well. I've had a positive experience with them in the past for about 8 years now. So, Xerox tends to be a little bit on the higher end in my experience when it comes to copy machine cost. So I think it's important to just look around and see what's out there.
Chris, did you have comments at this point?
No.
Okay, I'll jump into the second part of my TA report. When I met with Peg, she and I had discussed preparing something for boards and committees to basically help discuss open meeting law. I've kind of expanded it out a little bit, and I wanted to get the thoughts of the board, because as I've been working on this, I've since discovered there is a volunteer handbook and there is a code of conduct that the members do sign. However, I've noticed the handbook is quite extensive because it goes into very deep detail on the law, which is great, but a little kind of overview of what the key points are that need to be hit, I think is important. I basically took a memo that I've written before, talks about swearing in, ethics training, making sure you review and sign the code of conducts form, making sure boards reorganize every year, talks about open meeting law, and basically highlights the important point of deliberation, which I think a lot of, folks kind of get confused about. So if, you have a board of 3 and 2 of them are, at an event and you're actually having a discussion or debate about something, that is actually an open meeting law violation. That does need to be discussed at a posted public meeting. And that's a little tricky when you have small committees, because it's very easy to just be speaking to one other person. So it's something that, we need to watch. And I put in this memo that best practice is to simply not discuss board, committee, commission topics with other members outside of an open meeting. It's just kind of a good rule of thumb to go by. The memo also goes through meeting space reservations, how to post agendas, and how to do meeting minutes. I originally had it as kind of like a sign-off form, but since there already is a code of conduct that's signed off, I kind of had this as more of a 2-page FYI primer, go over a little bit about all the key points, and obviously wanted to run this by the board for their review before this went public.
I thought it was very good. It hits all of the basic pieces that are sort of necessary that sometimes you just need to review every once in a while. So I thought it was very good. I thought it had what it needed.
Kristen, the question that I had, and I was trolling my town government today. There's quite a few committees that don't have current minutes posted. So, I'm not talking like I met last week, I'm not going to meet until next week. So obviously those aren't there. You're talking minutes going back in time. You don't need to answer now, I'm sure it's something to ponder, but how do you go about addressing those? Because somebody may not want to go through the whole video and they want to look at like a snapshot in time and see what the information is, but for lack of minutes, how do we correct that?
So I can give you a short answer for now. Minutes are required to be at a minimum given to the town clerk. They don't legally have to be posted. That is just the way that it is done here, which I think is an open and transparent and good way of doing it. But so long as past minutes have been given to the town clerk, residents can request copies or visit the town clerk's office and review those. In terms of trying to get older ones up online, sometimes that can be a little tricky, and the best thing to do is sort of start fresh and go forward and get the new ones online.
Okay. All right, I don't know if maybe you want to put something like that in your memo,
Sure.
to update that as a gentle reminder. And then no one is doing it maliciously. Everyone's super duper busy and, 1,000 things to do. And unfortunately, I think, notes or minute meetings kind of fall to the bottom of the list in limited time. Okay. That's all I had for you on that.
Does that sort of meet what you were looking for, Peg?
And again, I think it's just a refresher that's needed because so many new people have come in and people have gone out and maybe they missed it.
Mhm.
So I just want to remove the, oh, I didn't know excuse, for that. So if you're signing and you do something, then we can come back and say, you knew better, type of thing. Okay. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's all I had on that.
Great. Then let's move on to old business. Discuss and potentially approve a drone policy. This is both the policy and if we approve the policy, we're also then in theory accepting the donation. I ask.
Well, that part wasn't on the agenda though, Scott, so.
Mhm.
Okay. Then we will discuss the policy. We'll have to put on a future agenda then whether or not to. I assume we obviously have to have the policy first. If we don't have a policy, we can't accept the donation. So
Right. I believe Chief Shartner is hopefully still with us this evening. Mary, if you could promote him.
I am here. Good evening.
Vivian, thanks for waiting.
So I thought your policy was very, obviously you didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
No, I didn't reinvent the wheel, but I emailed out today. Franklin's policy is through a different vendor than what we have. But I
Okay,
incorporated their policy into our vendor's policy. It allows me to edit, and that's the one I sent out today. For all the blue lines, the blue wording and red cross outs and whatnot. Of course, my major concern with the policy is the integrity of the videos that we take and what's done with them and what's not done with them. When we take videos, when we don't share videos, of course, is the number one thing. The only thing I took out of our policy is that you can only fly during the daytime. I'm not sure why our vendor has that, but that's obviously not going to be much of, can't fly at night. That's not going to be a great thing. So, so if you saw the second email I put out today, that's actually how our policies come out through our vendor.
were they pretty much very similar?
Actually, I'm going to say that our vendor was pretty basic, and I added a lot from Franklin's policy added in there. I definitely, it was definitely a great start that our vendor gave us, but I don't think where it's a newer unit coming across the country. I think they haven't invested much time into writing policies on unmanned aerial systems. So it was nice to have their policy rather than just relying on our policy that I could add to.
I looked very closely at the first one, and then the second one, I didn't really have a chance to look at really closely.
Yeah, it mirrors whatever we didn't have in ours. I took out and put it in ours out of Franklin's and just put it under our letterhead and in the way that our officers can obtain them online or print them out.
Okay,
I can share my screen if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be, because I think I'm looking at the most current one and I have some questions on it, but if it's not the most current one, then my questions could either already be answered or become irrelevant.
Okay, let's see. Can you see this? Is it small? Okay. So it looks like the first change you added was just another definition, which was the remote piloting command.
Yep.
Okay.
I thought it meant person in charge.
You know what, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And these look like updates to say Berlin and chief of police
Yep.
without authorization from the chief of police.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I took out the written because at 3 o'clock in the morning when you call me, I'm not gonna go to the computer and write it out. So,
And then the biggest part, it looks like you added this section on the use.
yeah,
Excuse me, relative to required training.
Yes.
So if you could speak a little to that, chief, I think that would be.
so yeah, so under section 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations 107, that's all to do with the FAA, where all the minutia is in that code. So versus coming out with a 12-page policy, it falls all under the code, which is actually covered under your license. You have to know the code in order to get your, I'm sorry, your COA, your certificate of authorization to be a pilot. You know, you have to know all that code.
And so that's the code where it covers, chiefs, that like, it's only part of an active active, the sort of the various things that were taught when we last talked about this, only active investigation, the searching for missing people, the sort of the various things you're allowed to use the drone
and
for, as opposed to
law
Right.
enforcement
Yeah.
derived. There's no joy rides with this.
right. And then just visual observer is who?
A visual observer will be a second officer on scene. You
Just staring at the drone?
well, you only need a visual observer when you lose line of sight of the drone.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily in every circumstance. I mean, if we're in
No,
some,
but I imagine if you're looking for a lost person in the woods, that you're gonna lose line of sight as the drone goes over the woods.
believe it or not, where the drone operator will be set up will be at the high point, and then not necessarily where we are.
Okay,
You know, I know in the past, I've been part of a couple operations with drone operators, and they're not usually near us. They're set up, actually, I was set up in a location with one of the operators who like drove like a half a mile away from us. And I drove down to see what he was doing, and it was actually, he had the line of sight on the drone.
okay. Just wanted to make sure that that last bullet point doesn't limit the effectiveness of the drone when it was searching for a missing person or an injured person.
Yeah. Yeah, and that red is already covered under the policy. That's why it was just repetitive, so I took it out of there. In our policy, we didn't have notification of accidents. So of course I added that, and also our policy did not, our vendor did not include training. So I added that as well. So it's a specific training requirement that covers us.
So Eric, you know me, I'm the queen of questions. Under privacy, and I think 606.3, and I think you started to touch on it a little bit. Kind of like the open meeting law where we need to, or, have people sign off on the, hey, I read it, I understand it.
Yep.
Will there be anything that you will have in terms of privacy for this? So it's not, hey, gather around and take a look at this, that it's really only the people who need to see it or the people who need to see it and do something with it?
So I think from my history, I am a huge advocate of you only need to see it if you need to see it, they're not for display, even within the station, unless it's deemed training purposes. So yeah, and that's why I kind of want to have a program coordinator for this as well. I mean, I have no issues overseeing it, but I like to have a program coordinator that is going to handle the minutia of the program with the sign-off sheets and make sure that they're trained. I did talk to Auburn Police. They did start their drone program. The district attorney's office will give us a assistant district attorney to give us a class on the do's and don'ts. So whoever gets picked to be drone operators, that will also be a prerequisite that they sit through that class as well.
Awesome. The next section on 606.4 on the fifth bullet item down, implementing a system for public notification. And we talked about this yesterday, you know, God forbid somebody goes missing. You're not running back to the office to do a reverse 911 to everybody in town to be like, hey, drones flying around. So is there anything that you could almost do like a preemptive, you know, your website, our website, the town website to say, once this is approved and it's all good to go,
Yep,
at
so-
times, depending upon blah, 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 you may see, don't freak, you know, type of thing?
Yep, so part of our code red for notification, they do now have an app for our phone that we can pre-record a message. And
Okay.
what I would do is I would open up for all drone operators as well as myself and the drone coordinator to be able to activate that that drone message. You know, like I said, it's a process to go through and record a specific message for a specific location. Obviously, if it's deemed necessary, you know, we'll make time to do it.
Mhm.
But we can pre-record a message to let people know that we're compliant.
Okay. And then final question, when it's not being used, where's it being stored?
The drones,
Yes.
the drones will actually always be stored in the drone vehicle that they're donating. Well, I should say one set will be in there, one set will be in a closet here.
Okay,
Actually, Mr. Stevens was adamant they would get two of each, so we have a backup.
okay. Wow. Eric, I only had like 3 questions. You answered the rest of them. I think you saw my
Yeah.
notes ahead of time.
Yeah, so I'd like to move this forward because as we're talking about budgeting, capital planning and finance coming up, we are due to buy 2 cruisers this fiscal year. We're supposed to replace our cars every 4 years. We have 2 cars that have been here for 6. So we are due to purchase 2 vehicles this next coming year. The Stevens family offering to buy a car, I'd like to not even have to request a car or give anybody any anxiety of me putting in a bill for $120,000 for 2 cars coming up next year. So, you know, I understand that we have to wait to vote on accepting a donation until, would that be November 1st? But that's also, I want you guys to keep that in mind too, that we are due for 2 cruisers this year. From what I'm told, they've gone up at least $4,100. I think I budgeted 50, just shy of 55. So we're looking at $59,000 a car, as long as the equipment didn't go up as well.
It's all going up, Eric.
Yeah, I know. And I actually, I'm in the process of, as you know, they canceled our 2022 order for our cruiser. I found one at another business and actually was plucking equipment out of it in order to afford it.
Yeah. I'm pretty comfortable with this, Scott. Do you want me to make a
Yep.
motion?
Sure.
I will make a motion to approve the drone policy.
Second,
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Key-Fi.
Stone Eye.
Yay.
All right, well, thank you very much. And like I said, from the time that you give the thumbs up for the donation, you know, once I can let the Stevens Family Foundation know it's a go, it's probably 4 to 6 months to get the unit up and running from there. And most of that's just waiting for a vehicle and also waiting for equipment to come in. So I know the town of Franklin got theirs in about 2 months.
Yep.
But
You want me to
I-
put that on the November
I-
1st agenda?
I've actually already put it on the draft for that night.
Okay,
So it makes it easier for you to remember to put it on formally when you do agenda
right.
setting.
mm-hmm.
all right, perfect. I'll get this up in regular form and I'll get it issued out to the members of the department.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Next old business is the voting on or revoting on or reconsideration of the Rockwell apartment, the affordable rent increase for the affordable units. And I believe they sent out the chart.
Yeah, it was in the folder.
Right, so they have in green the sort of a 5% rate for increase for existing tenants. And sorry, I'm reading it all over. And then a different rent for new tenants. I see how they've done it, right?
In blue.
Sorry, it's not red and blue because 80% is in green and 50% is in blue. And so both, it says new and existing, and so that the new tenants are going to have a larger increase, again, that was allowed by the rules out there. And that for existing tenants, they're holding the rent increase to 5%. Is there a motion to accept these?
Motion to accept the rent increase request for Rockwell.
And seconded.
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Key-Fi.
Stone Eye.
We have on the agenda the fiscal year 24 budget process. Kristen, is there anything more to say about that that wasn't in your town administrator report?
Nope, great news. I've already talked about it.
Yay. And under new business, we've already done the first two items. So we're on the appointment of an acting town administrator being June, who just couldn't get enough of it over the last
Right.
months or so. While Kristen is out on vacation.
She has graciously agreed, and I am very appreciative.
Yay, T2.
It's just something to note. Again, I am gone that same time period. Not that I'm really all that important, but that warrants will need to be signed on that Monday. And I think that's going to need both Chris and Peg. You'll both need to go down to sign.
June, please remind me.
Is there a motion?
I'm sorry. I was looking up something here on our agenda.
I'll make it. So I move to make the appointment of accountant June Poland as acting town administrator from the dates of October 22nd through the 27th, 2022.
And I will second that motion.
My gut just said all in favor, but I have to do this. Hawkins, aye.
Key-Fi.
Stone Eye. Kristen, you're sharing your screen.
Oh, I am.
Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Oh. Well, I'm looking at my
Already took your
agenda
credit
and my
card numbers
email.
off of your screen, so we're
Yeah.
all set. Yep.
Good thing I only had the agenda and my email up. Hold on. How do I stop sharing? Everybody wants to see my ridiculous amount of email I get.
Wow,
Stop
you
sharing.
only have 3 unopened in your inbox? I'm impressed.
I try to keep up.
Yep,
Okay,
I'm way better at
should
work.
be at the
than-
top. There's a
Yeah,
stop sharing
red-
button.
There should be a red button that says stop share.
Oh, you know what? I had it minimized because I was, oh, stop share. There it is.
we
Okay,
go.
sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know.
That's what I
Gotcha.
get for looking up at my other screen and not the. Anyway, the next item is a special event application. The Berlin nonprofit trick or treat event on town streets and ways, including 1870 Town Hall, Bullard House, Berlin Public Library, Woodward Ave, and Carter Street on Halloween night, Monday, October 31st, from 5:30 to 8:30.
No, it's Sunday, October 30th.
I was just saying, because the agenda says Monday, October 31st, but I thought it was Sunday.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Rebecca's in the audience, I think, if she can
Yes.
confirm.
I believe she is.
She held on.
I think that's a Scribner's error on the date. Everyone thinks Halloween.
Sorry.
Okay.
Chris, stop yelling at your husband.
So this has been a debate amongst the team, and we landed on Sunday, October 30th. So that is what we are planning for this year on Sunday.
Great. Do people have questions? I think it's a fun and exciting thing. It'll be interesting to see what that does for attendance up here at the Eco Village, since last year when they were on the same night, the number of people who carpooled from one to the other, we were quite inundated up here, which was fun and exciting. I'm quite bummed I'm going to miss it this year. Anyway, is there a motion?
A motion to approve the special event of the Berlin nonprofit trick-or-treating event.
And there's a second for October 30th starting at 5:30.
Yep.
Okay.
Hawkins, aye.
Key-fi.
Stone Eye. Rebecca, I already have my costume, so I'm ready.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Next agenda item, TA notice to appoint.
Okay, so this was a late addition, but I was fortunate enough to sit on the interview panel for Mr. Adam Crossman, who was applying to fill one of Fred's positions down at Highway. And it was a unanimous decision between myself and Sue Tarian. We had Fred, obviously, and Jimmy, I think.
Kim Spinney. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Still trying to get the names. We thought he would be a great fit. So I apologize that I wasn't able to get you the memo, but the request would be to appoint him to fill a position of operator, driver, laborer, mechanic with a starting pay of $26.49 per hour, which is grade 8, step 2, moving to $27.08, which is grade 8, step 3, upon successful completion of the 90-day probationary period. He does have previous municipal experience. He is fully licensed, CDL, hoisting, and several other licenses that will prove inevitably to be useful. Yes. He also has a dog jerky company, if anyone's interested. He makes jerky for dogs. So he's a very interesting gentleman. He had a great personality, great attitude. I think he'll be very successful. So I intend to appoint, and I would ask if the board has any issues.
I would make it I would make the motion to appoint Adam Crossman, Highway Department operator, driver, laborer, mechanic.
Second.
Great.
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Key-fi.
Stone Eye.
Fred will be thrilled. Thank you.
Yes.
Kristen, are we good now, or are we still like 1 or 2 bodies short?
One short. There was another interview that we did, I believe it was Thursday, and we're still working on that one. So
Okay,
hopefully
cool.
if that one comes through, we will have a full house.
Nice.
Awesome.
And then so board question, comments, and liaison updates. Chris, Peg?
I have 2, I'll go last.
I just have a quick one on the ZBA. They held hearings for 3 hearings, I guess it was. Unfortunately, the principal from Berlin Memorial did not attend the hearing and did not send any kind of message as to why. And this is the second time, I guess, he did not show up. And so the chair told the group that they had 2 choices. They could either vote to extend the hearing to a later date, or they could deny the request for the Berlin sign. And I guess the members of the ZBA were very frustrated after 2 times of not having him come. And so they denied the sign. So unfortunately, that means that he would not be able to go back to ZBA for 2 years. So then they also had a hearing for the cannabis cultivation facility, which I believe they continued. And also the flat penny, I believe. So I think that one's still in process also. That's it.
All right, mine are super quick. I finally have a meeting on the books with the Boo Sox. Yay.
Yay.
They're coming on the 27th. I told them I'd meet them in the vestibule, because I like to say the word vestibule, at 2:30, and I'll bring them up. We'll just hunker down in a room and we'll talk. Kristen, if you're there, I'll just kind of like lean and you can wave and things like that. But again, no idea what they're here to talk to, so I will take notes and send it back after we're done. And then Scott, you had alluded to this earlier about Concom and the presentation on plastics. She previewed it, Anne, she previewed it during a Concom meeting last week, and it was pretty sad because a lot of the things that we think are recyclable really aren't for that. So, and just the statistics that she started to give broke my heart about, the amount of plastic waste that we're going to have, and where it's been found at the top of Mount Everest, and like way deep down, literally like floating along on a fish. But there was one part of the presentation that kind of caught my ear. She was talking about hydration systems, and I guess BMS has one where you bring your own bottle and you put it in, and it tracks the water, and it basically tells you how many plastic bottles you're removing. So I was wondering, and I am not asking June, so don't think that I'm asking, and I am not asking Kristen, at this time. It's one of those things that can be looked at in the future. But I'm just wondering, and you know what, and I can probably do the math on warrants, how much money that the town offices spend on bottled water every year. And the reason why I ask, or that I'm curious, is that a hydration system costs about $900 to install it. So, it's one of those things of, do you continue to buy bottled water? And you know what, we're really not doing anything, but we're expanding our footprint, because when you walk by Kristen's office and before you hit the stairs, you look over to the left, and there's at least 4 or 5 rows of those big giant plastic bottles, and people usually bring plastic cups. Or, do you take a look at that cost and maybe look towards a hydration system? I have no idea what's involved. And I wrote back to the lady Ann, and I said that I would bring it up with no promise of getting the information back to her in any type of timely manner, and that it would be hers to run with in terms of what are the true costs, maintenance, et cetera, it needs to be plugged into a line, et cetera, et cetera. But it was just one of those key things that, if something small between the money that we spend upstairs on water, and I'm sure that, Eric and Chief Clark probably spend a boatload down there as well. Could that be our small contribution to trying to shorten our plastic footprint? And Kristen hit on energy, that they're back up and running, skippy-doo. And that was it.
Yeah. That's why the environmental slogan is, reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is the least of those three. If you reduce your usage and reuse things, then you definitely have a big, you definitely save
Yeah,
the
there's a certain number, when you flip them all over, there's only a certain number, and I'm looking for it, that I see it, that is really kind of sort of maybe recyclable. But otherwise it's really not.
Yep.
The plastics that we all toss away down the dump really aren't that.
And when they
that
get mixed
recyclable.
like they do at the dump, that there's places that won't even take those anymore. Those get thrown in trash, even if you're
Yep.
throwing them in a recycle bin. Is that the cost of separating it all out is just
Yep.
is more than the benefit.
Yeah, so I did. So I pointed Ann towards the Board of Health and said, maybe this is a presentation you can do for them. I don't know if there's anything that could be done around redoing our recycling. I don't know, but she was asking for people to talk to. So I told her I'd maybe kind of sort of look into the cost, and maybe kind of sort of, she can talk to Board of Health and, at some point, but, again, not on me, Just wanted to bring it up. It is a fabulous presentation. It's a sad presentation, but it opens your eyes a little bit about truly what we're doing to Mother Nature and why she's so pissed at us. Mhm.
Peg, I
Okay.
just wanted to add that I met Dr. Charles of the Woo Sox, and I have a suspicion what he may be wanting to do. So if I am around, feel free to
Really?
hi. Yeah.
Well, since Scott showed up with a funky hat to open the meeting and I have my nacho hat, which doesn't do anything for my hair, hopefully he'll have some type of funky hat, that I can walk away with because I love hats.
Hopefully.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see. So open for it and then I'll report back. That's it.
We do not have an executive session tonight. And so I think a motion to adjourn could be in order.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Hawkins, aye.
Key 5.
Stone eye.